Good.
What it mean to be the best? Riding foes, feeling unimpressed. Make me reminisce, throwing bows, bend the corner, set my mind up on the goal. All I know is stay down, bad, I'm the goal. Okay, feel like the best, the great. Now there ain't no debate. Yeah. Okay, feel like the best, the great. Now there ain't no debate. Yeah. I ain't gotta say much. Know the boy got a touch. Another win for the rush. Another win for the rush. See me once and got a crush. See you twice and that's enough. Get the ring sized up.
Welcome in. Welcome to Tell the Truth, episode 73. Brett Veach season is here. We are a week and change out from the NFL draft. We got a lot going on. DG is a year older and has glasses now. And I wasn't gonna let you get away with that. We are ready to break down some of these prospects. DG has his top corners, safeties, and edges for this class to get into. We've got some Chiefs draft rumors that are flying around. Man, it's an exciting time, man. CJ, DG, how you guys doing?
Not well, because Angel Serpa is ass.
They put him in the worst spots. He's not like that. Bro, they always put this man in and we down running to. Why do they do that to him? I don't know why they do that.
It was 2-0, gang. 2-0.
Why they put him up? Like, come on, bro. I know he a lefty, but stop doing that to him. He's not like that. They put him all the time down runs or basically. It's always why do they do that to him?
Despite the Royals getting their ass kicked in New York right now.
Jesus Christ.
Doing good, pretty good. Ready for this draft, man. Ready to see who's gonna be drafted. I'm at my point where I'm ready to get this thing going, man, on the road.
Yeah, I'm tired of mocking. I'm ready to draft. I ain't gonna lie. I'm tired.
Even I've slowed down on the mock drafts a little bit. That means that it is time for the draft to actually happen. For the record. And so next week, obviously Tuesday, we will end up having our regular Tell the Truth, in which we'll do our mock draft special, which will go through a whole bunch of scenarios and what could happen with the Chiefs in the first round. We'll talk about some of that also today with some rumors that are flying around. But also next week on Thursday and Friday, will we be live streaming during the draft? Do make sure you sign up for the Playback Room, playback.tv/KingdomCast. We'll be live streaming from there, and then also simulcasting it to Twitter and YouTube. To have some fun, please come by and interact with us. We'll be reacting to all of the picks in the first, second, and third rounds, and then obviously giving you breakdowns as far as the Chiefs are concerned. And we'll be looking forward to it. Hey, shout out to Bobby. Appreciate you first time viewers.
Shout out Bobby, man.
Bobby.
Appreciate you for coming by, Bobby. Not quite, but we're close. I was surprised because I know how excited country was with the mock drafts. So all that being said, obviously we have some things to address. Obviously a little bit of a slow period as teams are really hunkering down as far as getting their draft boards set. They are still having some of these top 30 visits coming in. One of those visits last week was, in fact, Mr. Josh Simmons from Ohio State, the left tackle, who unfortunately has a torn patella. The reality situation is he was always going to be a visit for any team that thought that they wanted to draft him because they had to get a look at him medically. And that's just the reality situation. And that's why the Chiefs ended up bringing him to Kansas City last week. So I guess I'll ask you guys just from this standpoint, because we all have our thoughts as far as tackle is concerned. In the event that the Chiefs take Josh Simmons, and we'll talk about, some of the other aspects of it. Say Josh Simmons can't play this year. Would that still be a successful pick for you guys, or pick that you would feel was worth it if you do think that he can be a long-term solution at left tackle throughout the rest of his rookie contract?
You're not drafting Josh Simmons to play day one. That's a long-term solution. So obviously Jalen Moore is the guy that came in supposed to start. Y'all know my feelings on it. I don't hate Josh Simmons as a prospect. I love him, but I'm just not taking that kind of chance at left tackle. It's your most second premium position on your roster behind quarterback for me. So is he worth the pick? I'm not mad at it if they do it. I think we've all come to acceptance that that's a reality, whether it be him or Conley from Oregon. Either one of those guys can end up being a Chief. But if you take him, he's not supposed to play this year. Not with that type of knee injury, at least for me. I'm gonna let him get as healthy as possible because, like I said, that's the second most important person on the team behind Patrick Mahomes to me for the future going forward. So if you truly believe he's the answer for 5-8 years down the road, then you have to let him sit redshirt a year, get completely healthy. Then we'll see what he does in 2026 for sure.
Yeah, I kind of tend to think that this is going to be their plan, regardless of who, if it's Simmons or anybody, really a tackle. 'Cause, I mean, obviously you brought in Jalen Moore to be the stopgap um, tackle for the next couple years, or at least next year to see, if we can get to that second year in his contract or whatever. But I do think it's something that they obviously need to do. If he's the best prospect that they feel fits what they need at this point in time, I don't see why they wouldn't do it. I know the medicals have obviously haven't been what everybody has liked, but if you get, I feel like if you get solid play out of Jalen Moore and able to allow him to come in and Josh Simmons to come in and take the year and develop and get fully healthy, have him going even for next year, or say you get into a situation too where he has to roll over to right tackle now because Jawan Taylor doesn't end up working out for his last year or whatever. So I think it's a position of need regardless of whoever they take at this point in time. So I think that they have to do as much homework on it as they can. Brevich's goal is always to get younger and never get older. So I think this is definitely a position where you're going to have to take a risk in getting younger for sure.
Yeah, and I think that that is what it really comes down to as far as taking a risk. Are you willing to take the risk on what Josh Simmons' recovery could look like, as far as him being out for a year or half a year, whatever that may end up being, where he's not necessarily ready for day one from that perspective? Are you willing to take a risk on a Josh Conley Jr.? Should he be there at 31? Where you feel like obviously he's healthy, he is polished, but he does have some, anchor issues as far as his power is concerned, maybe a little bit shorter arms than you would love for him to have. So is it going to be, that level to, you're going to be okay with? But as far as the risk for Josh Simmons, that's again why they brought him in to evaluate what was a full patella tear. And I know people have been, it's ACL, it's patella. But obviously it's the patella bone that connects to the lower bone within the knee, major for stability purposes, and it's not the easiest thing to rehab and come back from, especially for a major Josh Simmons science. That comes with question marks that they have to check out. I think ultimately there is a little bit of a question mark simply as Josh Simmons as a prospect is like, okay, do you think that he checks out from a medical standpoint? Then good, and you feel comfortable with his tape and his talent, that it makes sense to bring him in. But if he does, then why wouldn't a team pick him earlier than the Chiefs would have the chance to? And so therefore he wouldn't get to 31. Where is the Venn diagram of medical risks that exists that gets Josh Simmons to slide to 31? Because again, left tackle is the most, scarce resource as far as non-quarterback positions in the NFL goes. It just is. You look at any value charts, you look at what these guys are getting paid, who gets paid, where they're drafted from, that they play for a long time. That is the most scarce resource that is not a quarterback from that standpoint. So the medical risk to have Josh Simmons slide, but also still feel comfortable with the Chiefs taking in 31, that valuation is going to be very interesting to see where it ends up lands, if that ends up being the pick, and if that even is possible to be the pick, because ultimately Josh Simmons could go a lot higher than that. The number of teams that could use left tackles out there does exist. Obviously, the Texans straight away, Laremy Tunsil. The Dolphins' offensive line is a mess. Honestly, the entire Dolphins team is a mess at this current moment in time. As we heard with the Jalen Ramsey rumors, I mean, you could go through any number of these teams that could end up using a tackle from that perspective. Seattle maybe could use a tackle. So it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening. Yes, Bobby, it was a full one for Josh Simmons. And so along those lines, I do want to talk about kind of the idea of a round one left tackle in general, and we'll address Bobby's other question as well, or comment, I should say, in a second. But two kind of news things came out, or I should say were talked about, kind of about first thing, Matt Verderame over on KCSN had discussed that making a tackle selection doesn't make a lot of sense for the fact that they made the investment in Jalen Moore. Well, 2 years, $30 million. Obviously, Juwan Taylor's getting paid a lot of money. They have invested, obviously, in the interior of offensive line at this point. And then after taking Kingsley Suamataia afterwards, and they can have some issues, or I should say holes to address elsewhere. I wouldn't even say holes, but places that they could, pick a guy first round. And then Nate Taylor said that it's more so just unlikely that you get a tackle that falls there at 31, which is really more so the side that I fall on, is that ultimately I would find it very, very fortunate and unlikely that you see, if Josh Simmons checks out medically, that he falls to 31. I would think it's unlikely that Kelvin Banks or Josh Connolly Jr. even makes it at 31, because tackles, again, are a very scarce resource. So I guess it would be two questions on this front. One, from you guys' perspective, how likely do you think it is that a tackle ends up falling that the Chiefs would feel comfortable with? And two, are you foregoing that or are you foregoing a defensive line prospect that you like, or a wide receiver that you like, to get that tackle if you don't feel 100% confident in it? I guess we'll just insert Josh Connolly Jr. as the possible tackle here. I know Ursary was a little bit early on, but I don't think that that's necessarily in the range. I think we can safely rule out Donovan Jackson as well. But how do you guys feel about the idea of a round one left tackle to Kansas City, and then what would happen as a result of that transaction?
For me, I wouldn't see the need to really move up for a Josh Simmons. Just based off the medicals, in my opinion. I mean, maybe if it's up, you can get up a couple spots from 31 to probably like 25-ish, 26-ish, somewhere in there. Then I kind of could see it. I mean, to me, it's kind of still the same pick. But as far as moving up higher than that, I really don't see them trying to do that. I think there's just too many defensive tackle, defensive line prospects that you could take at 31 that'll obviously help you out in a lot more immediate impact, in my opinion. So I guess no to your first part of your question. What was the second part?
What would happen if they did go tackle at round one? Yeah, as far as offensive line was concerned.
Then I would think that it would be that either Simmons or somebody, possibly like a Banks, somebody like that, falls just into their lap, and it's kind of one of those things where they just can't pass it up. So I think if the guy is there that you like, if he's there, yeah, take him. But I think if he's not sitting there, then you obviously need to go to the best available prospect on probably on the defensive line.
No, yeah, I pretty much agree. From a Chiefs perspective, I'm highly confident they'll probably end up taking an O lineman. I think we've been pretty much in agreement, at least for our show. If it is 31 and the guys you like that are there, I would prefer the D tackle, just because I think that's more of an impact player for us right now in 2025. But this is a long-term pick. I don't think this is for a high-value player that can, in their eyes, think that can help, that can change this team for now. And we know we're never going to be in a position to take a tackle ever at the top of the draft, because we don't lose enough games, and obviously we don't move up unless they feel the need that there's not a player worth value of trading up picks. And like DG said, none of these tackles, in my opinion, I would move up for. Maybe a slight couple picks if the opportunity's there. If the guy you really want falls and he gets close to 31, like 29 or 28 for sure. But outside of that, I've always been get a player that can help your team win right now. So I would stick with our original game plan. Try to go Harmon if he's there. Definitely go Walter Nolan if one of those guys slips and falls. Do it at one of the quarterbacks getting pushed up. But I'm not mad at them if they took a tackle. That'd be the chief thing to do. Hey, we're going to throw multiple darts at this left tackle position and hope one of them sticks, whether that be Jalen Moore, whether that be Josh Simmons, Conley. I think most of the mocks, I'm pretty sure that Kelvin Banks won't even sniff 20 at this point. So it's pretty much a foregone conclusion. It's either do you love Josh Simmons and medical clears, or do you want a defensive player that can help your football team right now? So I'm not mad if they take a left tackle. I wouldn't hate it, but it's probably looking like, from the Chiefs' perspective, it's something they would definitely do. I personally wouldn't do it just because I just don't love these tackles like most people don't. But from the Chiefs' perspective, I don't get why Matt Veteran said that'd be a bad decision. I don't get his opinion on that part, because you have to throw as many darts as you can to this position, because you have to find one that's going to stick. And like I said, we're just in an awkward position because like I said, we're never bad enough to get the elite tackles, and we haven't really invested to throw picks from future drafts to move up to get the elite ones. And I don't think nobody in this draft is worth moving up that high and moving that much of value to go get, in my opinion. So it is what it is. If they feel they can take a guy at 31 and he's a project, then it is what it is. It just sucks that we took Kingsley last year and we're right back in the same position. That's why it sucks. If we wouldn't have taken Kingsley last year, nobody would be as upset about it. It's just because you're doing the same thing in back-to-back years. Because Kingsley wasn't a guarantee starter last year. It was a possibility. If we took Josh Simmons this year, he's not a guarantee starter this year. It's a possibility. That's just I get the frustration from fans, but from a football building standpoint, you kind of have to do it because, like I said, we're never going to be high enough to get the elite tackles. So it's either do this or get a guy that can play you from a football standpoint defensively right now. And then probably in their mind, they think they're good enough defensively to do what they want to do. I don't think any of us would be mad if we took Walton or Harmon. I think either one of those guys would be a high impact player for us day one. But in their mind, they're like, we have to figure out this left tackle position. It's just we've been doing this, like I said, bro. We've had 5 different starting left tackles and 5 different Super Bowls. The fact we even did that right there is crazy in itself. So we gotta figure this out eventually. So I wouldn't be mad at it, but it's definitely a cheap thing to do, be taking a left tackle.
So I guess it is up to if the Chiefs have felt like they have gotten to the point where they have to take a tackle and need to move on from it. I understand what Matt was getting at, specifically the part that this tackle class is not that great, and I think that will lead to teams wanting to push these guys up the board, understandably so. But to say this, if it is whoever the tackle is, a day one starting guy, then ultimately I think what you see is that Jalen Moore is going to be a swing tackle this year and then possibly take over for Jawan Taylor at right tackle next year. I think that is, what they brought in Jalen Moore to be insurance for, just to make sure that they didn't have to take a tackle. But if that's the reality situation, I don't think that they're going to lose their mind over paying a little bit extra of 1 year for that insurance policy ultimately. And I think that's what it comes down to. And, as it pertains to where these guys are going to end up falling, I think that there are a few sites that do a solid job at being able to take a look at it first, as far as, kind of grinding the mocks and mock draft database is concerned. You're talking about Will Campbell and Ahmad Membu to answer Bobby's question as far as where these guys are to go. You're talking about top 10 for both of those guys. Membu has shot up the draft after having a really good season for Mizzou and people seeing the athleticism that he brings to the table. That's why he's projected to go up there. Will Campbell obviously projected to go as high as possible as well. And then you get to Kelvin Banks and Greg Zabel, even though he's more of a true offensive lineman in general. But you expect Kelvin Banks, like CJ said, he's probably not going to make it to 20. Because too many teams do end up need some tackle help, and obviously they got them, kind of targeted here for the Dolphins. And ultimately, as you get into the 20s, this is the major sticking point. This team badly needs as much offensive line help as humanly possible as it currently stands. And so, are tackles gone? Before this, obviously they'll have Josh Connolly Jr., who it lines up with us from that standpoint. But does he go higher than this? Because teams are not comfortable with Josh Simmons' risk, or is Josh Simmons already gone and the Texans have to settle for Josh Connolly Jr.? That's really the pivot point as far as this draft is concerned. And there's still plenty of variability that has to kind of get parsed out from that standpoint. And the other thing I did want to show, because ESPN does a pretty good job as far as its analytics are concerned. Let me see if it pulls up here. It's going to pull up. There we go. And what they show as far as kind of what the Chiefs could possibly do at 31, obviously it says that the 10% chance of taking the idea that Josh Simmons is the person that the Chiefs end up taking. Obviously, Mel Kiper Jr., Jordan Reed of ESPN, both also mocked Josh Simmons there. And then you see Donovan Saraku, the BC Edge, James Pierce Jr., Tennessee Edge, and Josh Connolly Jr., the offensive tackle out of Oregon. Obviously, you see Greg Zabel. That's not going to happen. I can tell you that right now because he's not a tackle. But they also kind of do it by player as well. And so you can look up where these guys are ultimately going to land. Membu, you're going to talk about top 5, your top 10, really, where his landing spot's going to end up being. I believe they have Will Campbell here. Yeah, there he is. Josh Connolly Jr. is a little bit more spread out, have a better chance of being taken in this kind of 20 to 40-ish range is where the majority of where Josh Connolly Jr.'s kind of range ends up, bearing out from their analytics as well. I was going to grab Kelvin Banks Jr. You could talk about the, 10 to 20 range and maybe a very small chance to get some 27-ish. So that's where you're talking about as far as that is concerned. And I think that the reason why I bring this up is just that to reinforce, these tackles are incredibly scarce to get in the NFL draft. Like, it is very difficult to get them, and the draft is really you can only get them unless you're trading significant capital to go get them, like the Commanders did for Larry Tunsil, or you don't even have the chance really to sign them in free agency. That's the real situation. Obviously, we signed Jalen Moore. He's a guy that's unproven as far as left tackle is concerned, even with his limited time. So you have to draft these guys, and that's why these guys get pushed up the boards, and that's why it's difficult. So I think that right now, as it stands, a lot of the NFL media is looking at this and saying, we don't know about Josh Simmons' medicals, so we're not necessarily going to project that he's going to go higher, and we're going to put safer players with, teams like the Texans, who they know they need a day one starter like Josh Conley Jr. But ultimately, if a team feels good about Josh Simmons' knee, they're probably going to pick him before the Chiefs ever have a chance to. And that's what this comes down to. And if they don't feel good about the medicals, then how can the Chiefs really feel good about the medicals? And that's obviously the tightrope that they have to walk from that standpoint. So all of that said about the actual tackle situation, something that does play off of that is the reality of an idea that the Chiefs could trade up in the draft and have the opportunity possibly to try and jump some of these teams. And again, I pointed out the Texans specifically as a target for that from that standpoint, because it would make sense if they felt like they needed to get ahead of the Texans picking at pick 25 to go do so. I think that similar to what we saw last year, to jump into the teens is going to be too much to ask for. But pick 23, Green Bay Packers, pick 24, the Minnesota Vikings, who have rumored to take some Brett Veach draft calls, are two places that they would make sense. You guys, obviously we talked about the tackle aspect of it. We know the defensive linemen that are really good in this draft. We know we obviously have the first round grade and things of that nature. Outside of the trenches, is there a player slash position that a guy that you feel could fall that you would want to trade up and go get? And I'll just name some names, and you guys can say guys like Mike Green, guys like Will Johnson. Will Johnson, if they didn't like the testing numbers. What do you like? Is there anybody outside of the trench guys that we have continued to talk about that you feel like they could go up and get and you'd be really happy with? Colson Loveland, would be another, option as far as the, in my personal tight end one in this draft.
Jahdae Barron. If we trade that for a guy,
you think so?
Non trenches.
Yeah. So you think that Barron would be the level of prospect that would be worth trading up to go get?
Absolutely.
What would his role be? Just to be the?
I mean, honestly,
he would have to start next to Trent McDuffie and then be the nickel, I assume, right?
He'd be the starting nickel for sure for now. And then obviously, we know eventually we're going to move off one of the guys, whether it be Jalen or Josh, because it's the last year of their rookie deal as well. So eventually he'd be your starting outside corner. But for this year, I think he'd be the star nickel for sure. But if non-trenches, he'd be the one I'd be okay with moving up with.
Do you think Barron is good enough right now to play day one corner outside of Trent McDuffie and two cornerback sets? You think it is? Okay.
Yep.
I'm not sure if I get there with Barron right now, but that's fair if you guys think so. Anybody else other than Barron outside the trenches, of course?
Outside of the trenches, I mean, I like Loveland, but I don't know if
do you love Loveland?
It's the 1-4-5 show right now, man. As long as Rasheed look like Rasheed, it's the offense goes through those guys. And I haven't heard any bad things about Jared Wiley, so that's why I didn't lean Loveland, even though I do love him. But it's just the fact if all three of those guys are on the field with Wiley, I can't really put him in there.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I don't really think to me it's not a lot of guys that I'm willing to go up and get. I honestly don't want them to go up that high, to get inside the 20s or anything like that in a position that is not in the trenches per se. I think if it's Jahdae Barron, you could probably do the same thing as Simmons if you want to get up to 24 or 25 in that range, 23 even, to try to get him. Then obviously you could do that. However, I do think he could have an immediate impact within Spagnuolo's defense, playing kind of that star position, splitting kind of nickel, safety, outside corner roles, stuff like that. So
this could be the best secondary in football. They got Jahdae.
Yeah.
From a Well, if he's on the roster, not too many secondaries I'm taking over the Chiefs because you truly give him a true nickel guy and you can truly move Trent and him around. With that safety rotation we got, and we brought Mike back, that'd be a scary ass group. I ain't gonna lie.
I think to me, it's almost kind of like having, and I it's probably a little bit bold to say, but it'd be like having two Trent McDuffies in the sense as far as they do on the field.
Exactly. You could truly just move Christian Fulton out the way as insurance, move Jade and Trent around based off matchups. Your safeties can truly be safeties. You don't have to worry about putting them in the slot as much. I would prefer us to have a D lineman. Like, that's my pick. That's who I'm preferring. But there is a guy that move up. If Jade fell anywhere close to 26 or 25, if he got past what the Texans are picking at 26, I wouldn't be mad at that at all if they decided to move up for a non-trench guy because I think he's that good. And especially how much DBs are getting paid. So.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. So I think that I'd probably disagree as far as Jade Barron. It's not that I don't like him as a prospect. Obviously, I do. It's just I don't know if his ultimate role here would be worth trading up to go make that happen from that standpoint. I could see the argument for Colston Loveland. I probably wouldn't get all the way there to do it for a tight end. I do it for Mike Green. I do believe in him that much as far as the edge prospect is concerned. But again, that goes back to the trenches. So I don't think that there is a non-trench prospect that I would go and trade up and go get as far as this is concerned. But Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon, I guess Kelvin Banks, yes, and maybe
Kenneth Grant, any of them guys. Somebody's going to fall down this board. I know we all look crazy when we say it, but we're hearing these QBs getting pushed up this board. Somebody's going to make somebody fall. So one of the guys that we thought before the draft would never be available, before the season, we never even thought Luther would even be available at 31. He's probably going to be there based off the board that I've seen. I've been hearing some people say he can even go day 2, which is mind-blowing to say because he's wide receiver 1 for us, and I know for me. But if guys are there are guys available, non-trenches that we could get. Luther would be one I'd be okay with getting. Not trade up for Luther, but I think if he's available, I would take him. Just because
you know what,
he's that good. Like
I certainly agree. I would, and I know this may sound weird, but I would rather take Malachi Starks than I would Jade Barron personally. Just because
I wouldn't be mad at that.
Player for player, I'm taking Malachi over Jade too. I just know Malachi not gonna be there. But for trade up, If those two guys, that's the scenario. Yeah, Malachi.
I only say that because I mean Malachi Starks is consensus, 2021 right now.
Best DB in the draft behind Will for me.
And his range really is around the 20s. So like he could be a possibility
if he falls.
They would trade up. So I would say honestly that is the non-trench player that I would trade up to go make happen as far as this draft is concerned. Now, what would that trade end up looking like? It's a little bit weird. So there's two aspects of this. One, there's the Packers aspect of it, who's Brian Gutekunst, who's the Packers GM. He trades all the time. He likes to trade and go up and down the board. So he's used to do that. Would they be willing to do it, for the Chiefs 31 and then 66 and you move back from 66 to 87? I think that I would be willing to do so. And then you throw in a 7th round pick just to sweeten the pot a little bit. That's a trade that I certainly could get behind. I don't mind moving back a little bit in the 3rd round if you're going to go up and get a guy that you really love from that standpoint. And it's kind of similar to, what they did with Xavier Worthy, even though it was a little bit further, or this would be a little bit further than they did last year for Xavier Worthy as well. And then the second part of it is Vikings. And the Vikings have a very analytical front office led by their GM, Kwesi. Unfortunately, his last name, I cannot pronounce it, so I'm not going to try to. But the important part about the Vikings' current situation is they don't have a lot of picks, which obviously they only have 24, 97, 139, and 187. So if there's an opportunity maybe for them to pick up a few extra picks, they would probably be willing to do so. Now, would you do a 95 for 139 and you throw in 2 7s to make them feel good about it? maybe. And they get the, pick equivalent of a 4th-round pick in addition to what they have there. Would you be willing to do this? I think I could be talked into it from that standpoint, but it maybe not be what Brett Veach would want to do, which would be interesting to see. So the other thing I did want to end on, though, just to say this, is the rumors that you're going to hear over the next week or so, don't take it as if anything is gospel, because Brett Veach is making these calls so that if the right prospect that he does feel he needs to move up for, whether it's a left tackle, whether it's a D tackle, whether it's edge, whether it's one of these safeties, cornerback, etc., he's doing that so that he's ready for draft night to make those calls as needed. So he doesn't need to say that we already negotiated a deal. He's saying, in the hypothetical that you guys want to move out, we already know what those terms and parameters could look like. So he's ready to move if needed from that standpoint. I think it's important to make that distinction too. So yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
I think this is probably the most least likely scenario. Obviously, of us trading up, I think it's more likely, honestly, we probably trade back than we do trade up, just because I expect one of the guys that we've mocked in most of the things we've talked about to be available at 31. And if all the guys we like are gone, then I probably assume they would trade back. But I think even then, I think there's somebody, there's too many players that we've talked about that will be available at 31 based off, I'm hearing the steam of these quarterbacks getting pushed up in round 1. I'm hearing even Jackson Dart could possibly go day 1, which is crazy to me. But if he does, then that's going to push another guy down. So I think it's more likely we wouldn't have to trade up, just because so many guys are going to get picked in front of the 21, 25 picks. By the time they get to 31, one of the guys we've mentioned throughout our whole offseason of talking is going to be available. It just come down to, like you said, what decision does Veach think is best?
Yeah. And I'm glad you did mention it as far as what the trade down scenario could look like. And of course, that does come into play really about these quarterbacks, which, hey, if these teams want to, and it really, again, pivot point, if Shedeur Sanders goes early, then that means that these other quarterbacks could possibly go, earlier than you would expect. Mm-hmm. The fact that I'm hearing Jackson Dart and Jalen Monroe and now Tyler Shuck, guys getting pushed up in round 1 conversations,
you know what that means?
Nuts to me. But if they want to make those mistakes, that's perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned. It'll be very fascinating to see how things fall out, and if that ends up happening, because if Shedeur goes early, then you got a chance. Obviously, the Saints seem like they're a quarterback needy team now, with Derek Carr possibly missing the entirety of the season. The Saints, have to take Shedeur in the top 10, or if the Jets want him, or if the Giants want him and they take him, then you have the possibility of a Jackson Dart going, within the first round, or a Jalen Miller going in the first round, because the Steelers still need a quarterback. It'll be interesting to see from that standpoint. And obviously, whenever these quarterbacks are taken, it helps push other guys down the board. And obviously, Chiefs have the quarterback position well wrapped up and taken care of, which is a nice place to be, obviously, in the National Football League. But as you pertain to trading out, if you heard the rumors, if the Browns want to go Travis Hunter and then trade back into the first round and take Shedeur Sanders, could be a possibility. Or if they want to take Jackson Dart and do the same thing, etc., that's where those conversations will end up happening, obviously, as we get further into it from that standpoint. So it'd be fascinating to see, but it always is important to say it takes 2 to tango, and trading out is always a lot easier in the mock draft scenarios than it is actually on draft day, because these teams have to want to come up and go into the first round. That's not always necessary. But I will say this: unless you're getting a top 100 pick, I don't think I really want to trade out. I think I'd rather just stick and pick. Or if you're going to trade out, get a 2026 pick. Add value in next year's draft from that standpoint. I think it's still undervalued what those future picks can do for you. It's one of the things that I admire about Howie Roseman and how he operates. So I would like to see them, if they have the opportunity to grab a 2026 day 2 pick, maybe over a 2025 day 3 pick, as far as that's concerned. Let me see. All right. So the last thing that I did want to point out before we end up moving on to DG's positional rankings, Kent Lee over at Math Bomb, who does the RES, relative athletic scores, did a little bit of team rankings as far as what ends up happening for some of these prospects. And so he said in terms of sheer volume, here are the number of players each team has drafted over the last 4 seasons with the RES over 8. And that's generally considered a good RES, relative athletic score. And Chiefs have 20, good for top 8 in the league as far as that's concerned. So look, the Chiefs obviously are a team that does chase after athleticism a little bit more than not. And on average, their relative athletic scores 8.479. So that is a little bit of a key that, these guys are going, or Brett Veach and his scouting department are going to go after athletes on a more consistent basis than maybe a lot of other teams would. And honestly, based on the draft history, I can't say that they're crazy for doing so. And I think it's better to have more athletes than not as far as that's concerned. So I'm not mad at them from that standpoint. All right. So all that being said, obviously talked about some of the draft rumors, things of that nature. DG, you're gonna go ahead and wrap our positional rankings up for the 2025 NFL draft and get us started with your top cornerbacks in this 2025 class. You talked about one of them already as far as Jahdae Barron is concerned. Obviously, the headline Travis Hunter. Talk to me about these cornerbacks, DG.
Yeah. Obviously, if I'm putting them in rankings, obviously, overall, Travis Hunter's probably going to be the first guy on that list. A guy who's extremely versatile, but I think I think positionally, he's a better corner than he is a receiver at this point. I think he would have more value as a corner than as a receiver at this point in time. Just the way he can manipulate in zone, uh, his playmaking skills, ball making skills in zone as well too. I think he can use a little bit more refinement in his game as far as man to man, but I think he has the tools and size. Obviously, is going to be a day one impact type player and will be nowhere near where the Chiefs will be picking unless something truly insane happens, and somehow, some way they move up.
I don't think even a gas mask could get that done.
Yeah, yeah, they would have to move.
Got to pull a Nico Harrison to pull that off, boy.
Heaven, earth, and hell to get up there to get a guy like Travis Hunter. But yeah, obviously, yeah, Travis Hunter will lead the list. Jahdae Barron would be my next guy. I think a guy, obviously, I watch a lot at Texas. Very versatile player. Can play safety, can play corner, play in the nickel as well too. Plays good in man coverage. Could use a little bit more work as far as his skills in zone as well. But I think that's something that will come with time. He's obviously a very smart player as well. Tackles extremely well. This is why I feel like Jahdae, to me, in my opinion, is pretty much Trent McDuffie 2.0. Just does everything correctly. There's no really, massive flaws in his game. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that he can, work on and get a little bit better at it, fine tuning. But I think he's going to be a phenomenal prospect for anybody who ends up getting him. And a guy I feel like on day one can step in and help your team immediately. Will Johnson will be the next guy on the list. Obviously, didn't get to show a full case of what his skills are in this. Was this a junior year in Michigan? I think maybe junior year.
Will Johnson
didn't get to show. Yeah.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You'd be correct.
But obviously, I think he's, to me, in my opinion, I think he's the best, probably man-to-man prospect corner in this draft, especially with the size that he has, 6'2", 202 pounds. I think he's kind of gives me early Jalen Ramsey type vibes, where you could kind of match him with some bigger guys in this league and leave him on an island a little bit by himself with that man with man technique. I think he's gonna be an awesome player. I think he's a day one immediate impact guy as well too. Siobhan Revelle Jr., guy who obviously I think would a lot higher had he not gotten hurt, torn his ACL. But still another guy that's got great size, 6'3". Another guy I feel like is going to play on the outside and be able to control a lot of those bigger, more physical wide receivers. Still kind of skeptical about how he's going to come back from the injury at this point in time, but I guess we'll see what's going to happen with him. But
quick question. I agree with you. Will Johnson, I agree with you as far as the man-to-man tape. And I think it's more so trusting his sophomore 2023 tape than what he put on, display, obviously, his junior year. Because I think he was dealing with some stuff, and those guys moved on. But as far as Siobhan, and I agree with you, as how good is it? I like, what he brings to the table. 31 too rich, and then if they traded out and hit their first pick was Siobhan, how would you feel about that?
If they traded out and you mean got him like in the second?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wouldn't be mad at it. He's obviously not my top guy. If I'm picking and there's a guy there, I think it's more of Trey Amos who fits your system a little bit better, in my opinion. But I wouldn't obviously hate it. The medical suck because at this point you don't know if he's gonna be healthy to play or be ready for OTA. So it'd still would be taking a little bit of a risk, but I still love the value in getting him in the second round, especially for a guy who obviously was probably going to be graded as a first rounder had he not had the injury in ECU. Well, I guess I'll go into my other my next guy, Trey Amos. A guy who Chiefs obviously met with at the Senior Bowl. The guy I feel like that they obviously have a lot of interest in. Great press man, corner, played at a very high level in the SEC, going up against a lot of great receiving talent in that league. Held his own, I feel like, very extremely well. I think the only risk in taking him is that you kind of know that he's not a very efficient tackler at this point. And that's something that Steve Spagnuolo and Dave Merritt have required out of their corners to be able to come up and make solid hits, be physical in the run game. So that's something that I would want to see if he can obviously handle at this point. I think that's a little bit of risk taking him on that part. A little bit grabby, but does have the ball skills as well. I think he can come in and help this team create turnovers and give some more opportunity and chances for Patrick Mahomes and them to get out there on the field.
I love watching Trey Amos play. That's all my comments. Go ahead.
Great play.
He's tough and physical. The next guy will probably have. I'm doing 10, right? Oh man,
that was 5.
5. Okay. Maxwell Harrison. A guy I feel like is I think he kind of his game kind of reminds me of Tyreek Woolen in Seattle, just with that speed and recovery. I think that there are points and times where he can be physically outmatched. But I think if you're looking for somebody that can get beat but then recover using his speed, Maxwell Harrison is obviously going to be your guy. I think early on, I could probably see him playing a lot more nickel, in my opinion, than on the outside early on. But I think he still has the size to be able to match up man to man on the outside and make some plays for you out there as well too. I kind of want to go to some of my guys that I feel like fit the Chiefs a little bit better to kind of finish out the list. Sure. Denzel Burke is a guy I've been watching for a minute. I think he's very underrated in this class. I think some people are going to sleep on him, and I think you can get him on as a day 3 pick and have him as a probably even a solid starter to begin with. But a guy I feel like to also come in and make an immediate impact for the Chiefs on special teams as well too. I think the downfall about him is just his ball production in Ohio State probably wasn't matching where he played at within that league. I think a lot of people will want to see a lot more of his ball skills, and he just didn't really get to showcase them as much at Ohio State. So but I still think plays with great strength at the line. Can kind of reroute certain receivers and things of that nature. So I think he'd be a great prospect on day 3 for the Chiefs. But I still think he's, to me, in my opinion, there's some guys that they're in the middle after Hairston that I feel like can be really interchangeable at that point. So my next guy would be obviously a local guy, Kobe Bryant.
Kobe.
Man, dog. That's all I can say. True, legitimate dog mentality. I feel like you're drafting him more because of the attitude that he kind of plays with. You know that he wants to compete. You can see it clearly on tape. He's got phenomenal ball skills, in my opinion. He's got good awareness in zone coverage as well, too. Efficient tackler in the run support game. So I think that all kind of goes back to his willingness to compete and always try to be involved. Big negative though is the small frame that he has. A lot of people, as far as him being in Kansas, a lot of people hated him being at 170, 175-ish, something like that, or whatever. I feel like it's kind of the Xavier Worthy situation all over again. But you know, it's never about the size of the dog. It's about the fight in the dog. So
That's right.
I think he always shows that on the field. So where's that leave me at 8?
That's 8. How do you feel about the scheme fit for Kobe Bryant as far as the Chiefs are concerned? Because I had 2 matches. There's no doubt about it.
Great tackler.
Yeah.
And more than willing to tackle. But size concerns, long speed concerns.
Yeah.
More of a, in my opinion, zone guy than man guy. How do you feel about
that? I don't think he fits the prototypical size that, you know, Steve Spagnuolo will like at his corner. But I think sometimes it to me it's very hard to pass up guys that you know are just willing to do whatever you need them to do. And I feel like Kobe is kind of one of those guys that wherever team he does end up landing on, I feel like you're getting, you know, raw attitude, guy who's literally going to go out there and play with his head on fire. But you know, I think he could pick up some of those nuances in Speed Spagnuolo's system. I think he's a smart enough player to do that. But yeah, I would have to agree. I don't think he fits the prototype that they normally look for. But you know, Trey McDuffie kind of broke that mold a little bit as far as the bigger corners and things of that nature. So maybe it could be a new day in the Steve Spagnuolo system. But we'll see. My next guy, a guy you talked about a lot, DMac and Noah Williams, California. Ball skills, excellent route recognition, can play special teams as well too. Big negatives, double moves. Just last year, in watching some of his tape, double moves really bite him in the ass. And I don't think playing at the next level. I know that's something that you're going to see end up seeing a lot of. So it could be one of those situations where he might need to come in and sit behind some of those veterans in the room and probably develop for a year, maybe 2, or whatever, while playing special teams and you know, learning from some of those other guys at that point in time. I think they're all on this. I think so. Yeah, that's 10.
All right. And
good work.
Anybody else you wanted to mention?
No, not really. Not at corner, at least.
That's fair. 2 guys that we'll bring up. One, Jacob Parrish at K-State. Not necessarily as much of a fit for the Chiefs, only because he is more of a nickel player. But a guy I really do like. I love watching his tape as far as that's concerned. Then also the intriguing one who's also not really a Chiefs fit, Darian Porter out of Iowa State. Obviously, played a little bit of wide receiver early in his career, 6-year senior, 6'4", 200, has really good ball skills. He is going to make a zone-heavy team very happy to be able to put him on the outside and continue to work on him. And he can pay some dividends for being able to be a ball hog opposite a more traditional man or solid corner that you know is going to be really good in coverage and force the ball to go other way. So I think that he's an intriguing prospect too. Along those lines, but thank you for that cornerback. I don't think I had any. Oh, the other one, I mean, Benjamin Morrison, who I think is pretty good. I think that he's more of a man coverage corner, but based on where his draft cost is probably going to end up being, I don't like him as much as Trey Amos or Siobhan Ravel. It's Savion. It's Savion Ravel. I got to get in the habit of saying it correctly. Yeah. I don't like him as much of a Ravel or a Trey Amos, so probably wouldn't be on our radar. But another guy, Benjamin Morrison, who is really good. He's going to make a team really happy probably early in the second round, too. So we're going to move on to the safeties of the DB position. Obviously, the Chiefs have Jaden Hicks, Brian Cook, Jamari Connor. We assume he's moving back to safety, and obviously just signed Mike Edwards. But who are your top safeties as far as this class is concerned?
Yeah, my top guy, and I know I'm gonna probably butcher his name. I'm sorry to say it. Nick Emmanuel.
Emmanuel. The Nick kid. Yeah, I like
Nick Emmanuel out of South Carolina.
Yeah.
Nick Emmanuel.
Yeah, man. I feel like, bursting on the scene and really showcasing his athleticism and skills at the combine is what's really shot him up the list for a lot of people. But at the same time, I think that to me, when I watch his game, you're almost getting a Derwin James 2.0 guy. I feel like they can fill up the box and play inside really well. Maybe even be able to match up with some of these more receiving tight ends, in my opinion. His size, man. He's a freak physical specimen, elite tackler. I feel like he plays with a great closing burst. And like I said, going up against some of these other tight ends shows very good natural recognition and noticing certain routes, things of that nature. So I think he's going to be a very good immediate impact piece. I could see a team like the Rams or who else in this safety? Maybe like the Vikings. Since this would probably be Harrison Smith's last year there.
Bynum do it too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Them going to get him.
Moved on to the Colts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't think he'll be anywhere around when the Chiefs start to pick. But I mean, if he was a guy that he was still there, I would have no issues with them taking a chance and opportunity on him. But which leads me to my next guy, a guy I feel like fits the Chiefs system, in my opinion, a lot better, is Malachi Starks. Effective run defender, great size and speed with physicality, great football IQ. Flipping on the tape, man, Malachi Starks, another guy. I think he just does everything correctly, and that's so hard to find at certain points in time in certain players. Does need a little bit more refining work in his press technique. A little too reliant on his recovery speed, and his discipline in zone coverage sometimes can be a little bit off. But I think a lot of that probably has to do with him just trying to make as many plays as he can for Georgia and being asked to maybe take a little bit more risk within that system. Maybe that's something that an NFL team doesn't ask him necessarily to do. But I think he's more than capable of being a day one immediate impact guy for any team that ends up drafting him. Xavier Watts would be my next guy at 3. Hold on, let me pull up my notes. Great play recognition, closing bursts, allows him to play effective downhill. His versatility as well too. I think he's a guy that you can trust in single high situations. Um, Any player this right?
That's fair sentiment. I get that.
Yeah, yeah. I think you can trust him in multiple situations. As playing too high, playing single high. Um, as well as in the box as well too. Can be a little bit over aggressive in his tackling angles. Does need a little bit of development in his man coverage technique, and sometimes I think he can be a little bit of an inconsistent tackler at points, just trying to make splash plays or things of that nature to get the ball back. But I also think that can be a good thing as well too, because I feel like the Chiefs desperately needed more DBs that are willing to try to take the ball away and take a little bit more risk, getting some extra possessions for Patrick Mahomes and company. Moving on to my guy, another Texas kid, Andrew Makuba.
Cuba.
Love his game, man. You talk about a guy who when he hits you, you gonna know it. You're definitely gonna know when Andrew Makuba is coming down and putting a pop on you. Plays with his head on fire. He's got elite speed, real capable ball skills as well too. Versatility as well. I think he can be in situations where he's in single high and in two man as well. Can play in the box a little bit also. But I wouldn't put him there too often just because of his smaller frame. I think that he can kind of be washed out by pulling linemen and things of that nature at this point. So I wouldn't trust him too much to be down there trying to take on 350-pound, 400-pound man in the trenches. But I do think there are points and times where he can come up and make some splash plays and even help you with getting the ball back as well too.
How early or what's the range that you feel comfortable with in Cuba?
Cuba.
Day two. Probably
66 or 95?
Yeah, it's more 95.
95.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm just asking.
60 66 would be high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
I think it's a little bit of a reach, but
is there any so as far as the guys you talked about, obviously you feel really good about Nick and Starks. Would you take Watts at 63, 66?
Yeah, I'd be fine with Watts at 66.
He's worth the pick, just not necessarily a better fit for us right now, but he's worth the pick for sure.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If it's him versus Makuba for sure. I just think I think he's a little bit more polished than Makuba is at this point in time. I think there's some refinement in Makuba's game, and what takes him to develop.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because as far as Makuba versus Watts is concerned, I think Makuba plays in a manner, and when I say this is going to be in a manner that is similar to Tyrann Mathieu, in that the fundamentals as far as being able to get ball carriers on the ground may be a little bit iffy at times, but the manner, physicality, and violence that they play with, I think it still makes up for that enough, and they still has the slot to split to free safety versatility that you would look for. So that's where I'm a little bit higher on him maybe than Watts as far as the Chiefs aspect of a fit is concerned. Even though Watts is a little bit more of that true free safety, more of that true split safety, he's just not necessarily the biggest run defense guy. It's not to say Makuba is really great at it, but I think Makuba plays with the mentality more so that Spags and Dave would say that we can teach him up and get him to be there from that standpoint, which I think is interesting. But it's an interesting conversation. I understand where you're coming from as far as that is concerned. I probably both classify them as 95 picks, though, ultimately. Okay, keep on going with your list.
Kuba. So I know that there's other guys in between some of these guys, like Kevin Winston Jr., Billy Bowman Jr.
Billy Bowman.
Like, I'm not sure how much I like those guys over the next guy. I'm probably going to pick, but I
it's your
know some
list.
people would probably put them in that list, so I'll put them in there for a second. But Malachi Moore is a guy that I think has been one of my draft gems out of Alabama. I love what he can do for this team. I think it's a need that this team has had for a minute. I think they needed ever since Juan Thornhill had walked out of the Kansas City locker room. I feel like they've been kind of lacking that free range, ball hawking type safety that could play center field for them. I know Brian Cook has kind of placed that role, and I don't mind him being in that role, but I think there are certain
I do a
matchups.
little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. There are certain matchups that I feel like he's not very capable of playing that role full time, in my opinion. I think he's more of what you would classify probably as a tweener safety. As far as I think he'd be a little bit better as a strong safety more than a free, but I know he's capable. But I think Malachi Moore could be a lot more capable than him. Like I said, exceptional ball skills, exceptional range in the deep part of the field. Um, can struggle at points in times to get off blocks, which leads to his next flaw, which is the small frame that he kind of has. That's why I think he's more. I don't think you will really put him in situations where he has to be in the box per se like that. I think you're more of putting him in single high situations and trusting him to kind of play center field and allow your corners to be a little bit more aggressive at the line, which I think would help out a lot. And I also think that having Jaden Hicks with putting those two together will allow them to play the roles that they're capable of playing. This is kind of short because there's not a lot of these safeties.
Yeah, no, I completely understand it. Anybody else? Yeah.
Last guy would probably be a guy you put me on to, RJ Mickens. Exceptional leader at Clemson. Exceptional change in direction, versatility, and single high and is a box as well, but does lack speed as far as recovery speed, straight line, getting backpedaling, speed. Needs work and doesn't have very elite range. Can be put in those situations, but also would probably want him more in too high situations versus being in single happy. Can also be a little flag happy as well too. I think he's a day 3, probably 5, probably 5th, 6th round. You probably get him in or whatever. Just be bringing him in, just seeing what he has at this point in time. But played at a very high level of football at Clemson, so I would trust that he'd be really ready to come in and compete. Like I said, the safety list, I don't have 10 for those guys just because I think this safety class is very top heavy. With the guys that are obviously there in front. And I think it just kind of tapers off at the end. I think the cornerback class is really deep. It's a lot more deeper than the safety class is at this point. So, I know some names have been floated, like I said, floated around Kevin Winston and Billy Bowman as well too. It's not that, and I know people say, "Oh, you're a Texas fan. You don't like Billy Bowman anyway." It's not that or anything. I just don't love his size, especially being. I think They say he's 5'9", but when they say you're 5'9", you're really about 5'8".
5'7".
Yeah. So I know, Tyrann Matthews made a career being a lot shorter safety in this league or whatever. I just don't see that when I flip on the tape for Billy Bowman. I could be wrong, but at the same time, I just think the size.
He's 5'9", he's 190. The speed is great. It is. There's no doubt about it as far as straight line, but I don't love the ball skills and the instincts to play the safety position at the level that I think would match what that 40 time may tell you, especially for that size, as far as that's concerned. So that's kind of how I feel about Billy Bowman. Like you said, like RJ, definitely. Two guys I did want to mention that are further down the board as far as the safety class and very specific roles in that case. Outside of obviously Malachi Moore, who maybe has a little bit more versatility as you talk about some day three guys, but Caleb Bransaw out of Tulane, 6 foot, 196. A little more of that Shamari Connor role that they tried to force Connor into last year, where you have that nickel split safety versatility. And I think he more effectively can fill that role if, from that standpoint. But still needs some coverage polishing that's going to limit him from that standpoint. And then the other guy is Shamar Simmons out of Arizona State, who's a little bit more of a versatile DB in general, again, in that same mold as well. So I could see either one of those, kind of things coming down the pipe from that standpoint as well. Yes, unfortunately, we did talk about Josh Simmons earlier on. You want to go back and listen after we go ahead and wrap up. We certainly can have that conversation. So that's it as far as the DBs are concerned. CJ, any DBs that you wanted to point out before you go ahead and wrap up with our last positional group for DG?
Billy Bowman for sure. Makuba. I'm trying to make sure I didn't miss nobody.
These are guys that you feel it fits.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody that you like. Obviously, you mentioned
Xavier Watts. Obviously, you pretty much mentioned all the guys that I like.
Yeah, you hit on the guys. Obviously, you mentioned Winston Jr., who's a guy that obviously is a little bit kind of like Will Johnson, who had a better 2023 than did 2024. I think that he'll probably end up making a team very happy. I just don't necessarily think he's that great of a fit. Lathan Ransom, also more of that box safety type that I don't think we necessarily need. The one thing I will say, for me, Nick Emmanwori is behind Makuba, Watts, Starks, and Winston for that matter. Only for that, it seems like it's a little bit more projecting of what his athleticism can bring to the table than what he necessarily showed on tape. But the athleticism is elite, and a team gets his hands on him, and the right DB coach can turn him into something special. Obviously, people started immediately making the Derwin James comps. I don't think he has the instincts for the position like Derwin James did coming out of Florida State. And ultimately, his draft position is probably going to end up reflecting that from where he ends up going. But I think that's an important distinction for where Nick Emmanwori is at in his kind of football development journey from that standpoint.
Yeah.
So last thing to wrap up, man, we're going to go ahead and hit on these top edges as far as the 2025 NFL draft is concerned.
Sure.
I think it's a good defensive line, or I should say defensive end group. It's a varied one, obviously, one that has some guys that don't fit necessarily with KC, but obviously are going to go high up in the draft. How do you feel about this edge group? I think that it's a very intriguing position, particularly for where the Chiefs are picking and where the Chiefs depth chart looks like, where they don't necessarily need an immediate impact, even though you could always use it. But could very well come up on the need for immediate impact in the near future.
Yeah, I think that there's some solid guys in this edge class, and I think that there's one monster.
Monster.
Abdul Carter is that one monster, man. Yeah, he's special.
Yes, he is.
He that boy for real.
I can really say, and obviously any team would love to probably have him. Obviously, he's probably not going to be anywhere near when Chiefs draft as well either. But obviously expect him to be probably the second guy taken on board behind Cam Ward at this point. But yeah, just phenomenal ball player, man. I think he's got the talent to be a Hall of Fame type player in this league. Depending on the situation and where he going. But I think he's obviously going to come in and make an immediate impact for any any team. I know that there's a little injury concern at this point in time. I'm not sure. What was the injury for him again? I know that
So he had it's a stress reaction, not a stress fracture. Those two different things. Stress reaction in his foot. And so he got checked out of the combine. Wasn't any issues. It's not going to affect his draft stock one bit.
As if it ever was.
Yeah. I think even if he was hurt, he was still gonna be the first edge taken off. So obviously he leads the list. I have these guys kind of switched. The list that I'm looking at has them in different spots, but I got Shamar Stewart second, and then James Pierce Jr. third.
Okay.
I think Shamar Stewart, the only downplay on him was just his production at Texas A&M doesn't match the athleticism and the athletic testing that he showed. But I think his game translates better to the NFL and where the game is going at this point in time. If he can showcase that athleticism and that type of speed off the edge that he was able to show at the combine, I think where, like I said, where the game is going now, where quarterbacks are a lot more athletic and able to move more out the pocket, things of that nature. I think you need a guy like a Shamar Stewart that fits in that speed kind of rush role. James Pierce Jr. I actually haven't got to see a lot of him, but I've heard a lot about him lately. I think that definitely can have a good first step explosion. I think he's another guy kind of similar to Abdul Carter and Shamar Stewart as far as his pass rush skills at this point in time. Obviously played at a really high level in the SEC, playing for Tennessee. But I would definitely like to see a lot more from him at this point. But I could see why he would be high on people's list just based off of where he played and the production that he was able to put up in the SEC. Michael Williams, another guy that I really like. Obviously, torched. I won't say torched. He destroyed Texas this year. Coming off the edge, especially him coming back from injury when he played us. He took Kelvin Bex Jr. to the woodshed, and obviously was able to show one of his best games against probably a guy we all feel like is probably the second tackle taken off of this board in this draft. So definitely a lot of upside from Michael Williams. I'm surprised that a lot of people haven't been talking about him a lot more, but I think he's going to be probably one of the more underrated guys in this edge class, in my opinion. Nick Scorton is another guy that I know a lot of people kind of been talking about. I got to see a little bit of him when he was obviously playing Texas A&M. A little bit bigger guy at 285. I personally think he could afford to slim down a little bit and get a little bit, quicker and faster. But definitely was able to showcase a plethora of moves at Texas A&M. I think he's a little bit more refined in his pass rush plan than his counterpart in Shamar Stewart. But I think Shamar Stewart is a little bit more athletic than he is. Where I'm at? How many is that? I mean,
I think you at 5. I think 4. You on 5, man.
4?
Did you mention Mike Green?
Not yet.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Go ahead. Keep going. I will say real quick. James Pierce Jr. is somebody that I watched a lot because I was watching a lot of the Tennessee guys, and I love him. I truly do. Like when you're talking about true juice off the edge, that's what he brings to the table. And it's tough because he is a little bit undersized for what the Chiefs normally would look like. But I do think that he has the frame that he could put a little bit more on if they need him to. But I really do love what James Pierce Jr. brings to the table. But I'm going to let you keep on going as far as that's concerned. And then I'll make a parallel to James Pierce Jr. once we finish this up, because I think it's going to be interesting as far as one guy that's got a lot of talk as far as Chiefs And this guy, some people are kind of squinting their eyes to make happen. Keep going, DG.
I'll go to your guy, Mike Green, a guy out of Marshall who I feel like I said, where this league is translating to now, I think his game fits where this league is obviously going. I think the only really downfall on him is just his size, and that he's just not very effective in the run game at this point. I wouldn't really trust him trying to set an edge or anything like that. I don't think that's his skill type. I think he's more of a piece that you bring in that will come in on obviously passing downs and give you some juice from that area. I think he's got a relentless pass rush plan. Um, I think that he uses his hands very well, natural leverage as well too. Um, Mike Green to be probably to me is going to probably one of the better pass rush guys from this edge position. And I think that's his predominant skill set at this point. Um, so I think that's the only thing that may drop him below some of these guys, just not being able to set that perfect edge or whatever. Another guy that I feel like fits the Chiefs a lot better, Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. Great size and length, hand technique, can set the edge really well. I think he does. Obviously, with Colin and Spagnola have looked for the edges. Kind of reminds me a little bit of George Karlaftis, but a little bit more juice, in my opinion. I think he's a little bit quicker off the edge than Karlaftis is, but does possess the size that they obviously like to have. Limited flexibility and bend though at points in time, so I think he can get a little stagnant with his pass rush plan at certain points. Hopefully, that's something that Colin and Spags can elevate for him. Kind of plays with a high pad level, so that's something I think that obviously can be worked on as well too. Jordan Birch would be my other guy. I know you like him, DMac, because that's
My guy.
yeah, his I've never seen a 260-pound man take a fake punt for what was it, about 50, 60 yards,
Mhm.
and it almost cribbed it too. So his athleticism jumps off the charts. Natural power to collapse the pocket. He's a great tackler in space. I think he plays phenomenally well in the run game. I think that's probably the more underrated part of his game. Pass rush production didn't match the at least elite athleticism, but I also think that maybe tend to do that Oregon just didn't ask him to do certain things at points in times. Um, Gap integrity can be an issue. He also plays with a high pad level as well too. But I think he's a phenomenal prospect. I would love to get him possibly on a day 2 pick, 63, 66. I would love him at those spots. 31 would be a little high for me. If they were willing to move back and maybe be in the 40-ish range and get him as their first pick, would love it.
Who would this be? I'm sorry.
Jordan Birch.
Jordan Birch.
Yeah.
I love him, but I don't love him that much. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I think you could talk me into 63, 66. I think that if they were going in the 40s, it would be more the Landon Jackson. Or some other guys that will keep going. And talk about. Sorry.
No, you good. You good. Next guy on my list would be, I'm not gonna say his name, Princely. That guy.
I don't know. I can't. Princely
Yeah.
I haven't got his.
Princely U. Ole Miss. But yeah, man, guy who plays with an exceptional bend, very quick processor. Does play with a high paddle level and can tend to get latched on to his blocks a little too frequently at points in times, and sometimes his pass rush plan can lack flash. But I think him playing it's always the SEC guys. I think that those guys playing at that level and showcasing certain talents that they have against, obviously, I think is the best conference to me, best football conference in America. Um, Says a lot, especially when you have production to go along with that. Um, my next guy, who I feel like, well, I won't say he's a fit. He's not a fit because obviously the Chiefs will probably never do this. Josiah Stewart is been one of my favorite guys to watch in this edge class. I think he's exceptionally explosive off the line. He plays with a really good pad level. I love his pass rush playing. I think he's got a plethora of moves that he can showcase. I think he plays with elite burst with his first step. Obviously, was able to put up good production at Michigan as well too. I know he played with some dogs on that line, and Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, things of that nature. But still to put up stats next to those guys and go out there and ball showcases a lot to me. Only downfall is that he lacks the obvious size that Spags and them would go after for as far as an edge. Kind of reminds me of when they brought in a guy like Uche last year, who was kind of to me in a similar size, similar skill set. But I would love to get him to bring him in and just have him be a third down pass rush specialist in his first year. I think he'd be a phenomenal talent for
Would
that.
Spags actually play him?
That's why I said, yeah. That's why I said that. Yeah, it probably would never happen, just because he doesn't possess the size and the traits that they like. Spags loves Ram 4x4s and he's more of a Ford Mustang.
Ram 4x4 is crazy.
Yeah, Spags like SUVs and he's more of a convertible. So, you know, I guess I don't. I still don't. But whatever. Spags gets what he wants. So.
Situational guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Last two guys
on the bench.
I'll say last guy to round out the list is a guy who I feel like is extremely underrated, but at the same time I think does need a little bit development in bringing him. But Tyler Beatty out of BYU, I think he fits exactly what the Chiefs love at the edge position. Plays with great leverage in the run game, exceptional effort as well too in his pass rush pursuit. He's a guy who just has a motor that just doesn't quit at all. Kind of reminds me again of another kind of George Karlaftis type player or whatever. And he's a BYU guy, so Andy loves his BYU guys.
Yes, he does.
But extreme versatility can move him in the inside as well too, which I know is something that the Chiefs, Spagnuolo and Cullen love to do, being able to move guys into that defensive tackle position and getting them matched up against obviously guys that are slower and lack the strength and technique in there and at guard. But yeah, lacks twitch off the snap and being tackling technique needs improvement, and he's not an elite athlete in my opinion. But I think Spagnuolo and them would tell you completely different. They would probably love him to death, especially over Josiah Stewart, who I would be really mad at if they took Tyler Beatty over.
Understandable.
Well, yeah, but that's probably gonna wrap up my edge guys.
Well done, DG.
Absolutely, DG. Great job. So the one thing that I did want to say, I've seen a lot of Donovan Ezeraku out of BC, who he is a prospect that I do like. And he impressed me early on versus Mizzou this season. It's the reason why I'm confused because I see a lot of people mogging him to the Chiefs, but then it's like James Pierce Jr. isn't a fit. No, I think that James Pierce Jr. is as much of a fit as Ezeraku is, even though Ezeraku maybe is a little bit more of a 3-down guy right now. I still think that James Pierce Jr. can get there where Donovan is, and I think he's a better pass rusher. So that's the only thing that I've seen a few of the people. Obviously, you named some of the guys I like, Landon Jackson, Princely. People are going to be like the Ohio State guys, like JT. Jack Sawyer is is George Kalafdis just a little bit worse of a pass rusher, in my opinion. The two guys I did want to mention that I think have flown, or three guys really that have flown a little bit under the radar. Braden Swinson out of LSU plays with a lot of power in his hands specifically. I like what he could bring to the table. Probably a little bit more of that situational pass rusher early on, but he has the frame and the size to be a 3-down guy to develop from that standpoint. So I like him from that aspect. You obviously mentioned my guy, Jordan Birch, who I think is, again, the inside-outside versatility. If you're looking to replace Charles Omenihu long-term, I think that's what he could bring to the table. The guy from UT, Barron Sorrell, who I actually thought flashed a few times when I was watching the interior Texas guys, obviously Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton. I liked what I saw from Barron Sorrell as well. If you're talking about a guy 95, 133, surely I love him at 133, but even 95 I could talk myself into because I like what he brings to the table. And then the guy that's going to go really far down the board, but didn't impress as far as what he brought to the table at Cal Poly was Elijah Ponder. And you're talking about what does this guy kind of bring to the table as far as a pass rush skill set that you can go off of. And he has all the requisite size. He has the athleticism that you're looking for. He's a guy that can be a 3-down guy too. It's just about obviously the development from a small school from that standpoint. But hey, if they wanted to bring him in on day 3 and work him up, I would not be upset about that either. Also, I will plug, I do like Johnny Walker Jr. out of Mizzou. He's just not necessarily fit for what the Chiefs like to do. So that's the reality situation. CJ, any of these edge guys you want to highlight as far as some of the guys that you like or anybody that wasn't mentioned?
Landon Jackson out of Arkansas for sure. That's a classic Spags pick. Not flashy, can set the edge, can obviously be good in run defense, can be a situational rusher given a certain package around him. He'd be a guy outside of the premium guys I'd be okay with grading for sure.
All right. So that wraps up all of our positional rankings. If you guys want to tweet out your individual list, by all means. I'm going to be tweeting out my list over the next week or so, and I'm going to be doing by positions, but just in general because I like to do that. So do be on the lookout for that as far as that is concerned. And we will be coming out with a few of our favorite Chiefs fits that will be coming out over these next few days as we lead up to the draft over on KingdomCast account. And then also we'll be coming out with our draft contest that will be coming out over the next week as well. Before we moved on, I did want to hold on. I just want to make sure I hit this right. All right. Before we move on to the promo and stuff, I did want to highlight real quick as far as our Twitter mock drafts. We've got that continue to run. Earlier today, we ended up doing the second round poll, and that's in the middle of it right now. Let me make sure I pull it up real quick. In the first round, you guys did end up picking Emeka Egbuka from the list of players and include 2 of the guys that we mentioned here today. And these guys were chosen based on, again, the consensus, kind of picks that would be available at 31 right now, as far as the Chiefs are concerned. But Donovan Ezraku, who we just mentioned, Maxwell Harrison, who DG mentioned as well. But ultimately, you guys chose Emeka Egbuka over them and Trayvon Henderson as far as that was concerned for pick 31. Which, hey, Emeka Egbuka, adding that guy to the wide receiver room could make a whole lot of sense to go with what the Chiefs already have. And then I wanted to pull up. Where is it? We're going to get there. I promise. The current poll that will be running until the morning, if you guys want to go over there and vote on it after the Chiefs end up picking Emeka Egbuka. Pick 63 in the second round. Obviously, South Carolina defensive tackle TJ Sanders currently leading the votes. You got Boston College offensive tackle Ozzie Trapilo, a little bit more of a right tackle guy. Texas DT Alfred Collins and Tennessee running back Dylan Sampson as possible options. We'll see what you guys vote for. We're going to continue to run this throughout the rest of the week, finish out this mock draft, and then I have another one for you guys next week leading into the draft as far as that is concerned. Anything else, guys, before we go ahead and get to the promo and get on out of here?
Sure.
All right.
Draft a week away, baby.
Draft is a little bit more than a week away. Again, we will be coming back to you guys next Tuesday, or I should say just Tuesday, a week from today. Obviously, with our mock draft special, we're going to be running a whole bunch of different scenarios, trading up, trading back, sticking and picking at 31, different type of actual, kind of positions to go work off of. We'll do different draft sims as well. because there's plenty of them out there, and have some fun with it to talk about. And we'll see if there's any rumors to talk about in between now and then. Obviously, any trades that may happen to shake up the first round, as every team currently has its own first round pick, and none of them have been traded yet. So we'll see what ends up happening from that standpoint. NBA, NHL playoffs starting up. Obviously, baseball is now into full swing. Go to Underdog Fantasy, use code TRUE3 or code KingdomCast for a $100 deposit match. Make sure you guys get on that. Have a lot of fun. Make sure you guys join up. Bet the House Sportsbook. Always look for those plays in CJ's Discord server. Always get some good people over there making some money, man, and have some fun as far as Underdog Fantasy is concerned. And we will be having our draft stream Thursday and Friday night next week, going over every single pick as it happens, reacting. I just jumped up. There we go. It'll be us. It'll be the Kingdom Cast through. It'll be Arrowhead AM PM. And I'm looking forward to it as well. And make sure you guys do join playback.tv/KingdomCast for that room to go ahead and sign up for. But yeah, sounds good. Anything else, guys, before we get on out of here?
No, sir.
No, sir.
All right. Sounds good, man. Y'all be easy. Peace out. Go Chiefs.
Yes, sir.